Good evening, everyone. Just doing a check if everybody can hear me. So those that I can see on the screen, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Very good. Thank you all. First of all, I want to extend my appreciation to all of our parents, our PTO leaders who joined us this evening, but also for all of the things that you do over the course of a school year to help support our children. I don't believe that our schools would be as successful and as positive learning environments without involvement of the parents, the caregivers, the guardians, and the families in the education of our children. So from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to extend my thanks to all that you do. You enrich our schools with activities that the district could not otherwise afford to do with your PTO efforts, your lending of your time, your ability to be able to pull together outstanding activities for our kids. So thank you for everything that you do. And thank you particularly for making time out of a very busy schedule, I'm certain, to be here with us this evening to learn about the proposed budget for next school year. I want to begin by introducing some of the people that are here with me this evening. I'll start with Ms. Linda Wager, who is our Director of Business and Finance. Ms. Wager has done an outstanding job, not only putting together next year's budget, but in the overall oversight of all of the district's finances, particularly during a very challenging period of the last few years with the uncertainty of the experiences we've had during the pandemic. So I want to thank Ms. Wager publicly for all of her efforts as our Director of Business and Finance, particularly for putting together the budget, but also for all of her efforts to provide resources for your students. So thank you, Ms. Wager. Additionally, joined with me this evening, we have several of our principals, and I appreciate their extension of the day to be here with us. I want to introduce them. You know them, you work side by side with them every day. Mrs. Helen Squilacci, who's our principal at Red Mill. Thank you, Helen, for joining us. Mr. Wayne Grignon, our principal at Genet Elementary School. Mr. Dan Garib, who is our principal at Green Meadow Elementary School. Additionally, I want to thank Peter Goodwin, who is our Director of Business and Finance, our Director of Technology, for all of his efforts. He's not our Director of Business and Finance, but he's pretty good at financing the technology and making sure that the technology resources are in place. He's kind of our co-pilot tonight to make sure that this meeting runs smoothly. I know that there are other people joining us right now, so I'm trying to let folks in as we proceed. So I think I introduced everybody on the meeting. Again, for those parents who are here with us this evening, I appreciate all that you do every day to support the children in the school district, but I also particularly appreciate that you are very, very busy folks and you're giving me some of your time this evening. So let's proceed. So as we put together the 2023-24 school budget, I think everyone realizes that we want to be mindful not only of the educational programs in the interest of all of your children, but we also try to demonstrate fiscal responsibility towards our taxpayers who support the school district budget. In order to do that, it's a balancing act between identifying the needs for all of our schools to support classrooms, but also to determine where we want to go as a school district. And we take our direction and our vision from our outstanding Board of Education that does so much to lead, to support, and to provide us with direction for our school district. Each and every year, our Board of Education revisits its goals. The goals define where we want to go as a district. We look at the strengths of the district. We look at our current issues that we face, and we try to bring all of our schools forward through the guidance of these goals. Our board has determined that we want to continue to be a future-driven school district, and that means that we have the curriculum, instructional program, the extracurricular activities, and the student engagement necessary for kids to develop the skills that they need for their futures. Not only in terms of the core content, but also some of the life skills, such as critical thinking, communication, planning, getting along with others, knowing how to problem solve. So as we work towards developing and implementing new curriculum, In addition to keeping in mind the skills and the academic learning that we want the students to do, we also focus on life skills. What do they need to be successful, whether they move on beyond graduation to a 2-year or a 4-year college, whether they move directly into a career or some kind of technical training, or they move into the military. The skills that our students graduate with are critically important to prepare them for their futures. And the budget reflects the resources our classrooms need in order to be able to ensure that those students develop those skills. We're also very mindful of the need to provide networks of supports for our children, not only to promote their academic performance, but to address their social emotional needs. We know that mental health concerns across our country have increased. They have also increased within our school district and across our state. Our board has made it a priority to make sure that in addition to having class sizes that are reasonable, academic programs that are strong, that we have the social workers, the counselors, the school psychologists, as well as outside services such as currently we have arranged for Rensselaer County Mental Health to provide a satellite clinic at our middle school and our high school for students who need mental health support. So our board is taking a whole learner focus, and the budget reflects the need to make sure that we have the academic support, but also support for student social emotional wellness and to address mental health. Very importantly, we want our school district, every single school in our district, to be a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment. Safety, not only in terms of being able to ensure that in the event of an emergency, we are able to have the policies, practices, and procedures in place, including the training for all staff, to be able to respond to those emergencies, the infrastructure in order to secure our buildings rapidly in the event of an incident, but also to make sure that our students feel a sense of emotional safety in each of our classrooms. They feel that there is a welcoming environment and that our families and our employees feel like they belong. So we are promoting through our goals, making sure the kids are prepared for their future, making sure that we're addressing the whole child, and making sure that the atmosphere within our schools promotes safety, welcomeness, and inclusiveness. Those are the board's 3 priorities. As we move to talking about the budget, the proposed budget ensures that we have resources to continue all of our current programs. In fact, we are adding some programs, which you'll hear about in just a little bit. Additionally, we have made sure that we are addressing both the academic and the social emotional needs of our students. The direction of our board is also to be good stewards of the taxpayers' resources, to make sure that we are efficiently delivering the academic and extracurricular program to our students. And that process goes on throughout the entire school year. We don't only look at staffing, for example, or some of our cost factors when it comes to budget time, but we look at those factors year round. And the board is always mindful of the impact of the budget growth on our taxpayers. And you will see the trends, which have been very positive in the last few years, in just a little bit. Additionally, our school district is considered to be in good fiscal shape. We are rated strongly by the New York State Comptroller's Office in terms of the ability of the district to meet its future obligations. We have strategically set aside monies in reserves to be able to take care of future needs and periods of uncertainty. We also have one of the best bond ratings that a public municipality or school district can receive, which enables our district to borrow money for such things as capital improvements at a very, very low interest rate, even in a tough economic environment. Additionally, in terms of academic achievement, every single one of our schools is considered by New York State to be in good standing. Our academic performance on grade 3 through 8 tests, Regents examinations, and graduation rate is far above the New York State average. We have some schools who've been distinguished at a national level, including Red Mill and Green Meadow, having been named as National Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence. Our high school has been recognized in U.S. News and World Report as one of the best high schools in the nation. And our schools have also received recognition from the State Education Department, Red Mill and our high school, Columbia High School, as being reward and recognition schools, for closing the gap in academic performance between all of our students and those students who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. So we are here to serve all kids, and our data reflects the fact that we are doing that very well in terms of their academic achievement. We also want to make sure that our budget supports the excellence in teaching that parents expect in the classroom. And that excellence in teaching is often reflected by some recognition that our staff has received. This year, we had numerous staff members receive regional and statewide recognition. Columbia High School teacher Steve Lapola, who teaches history at the high school level, was recognized as a Channel 13 top teacher. And Liz Griffin, who was our library media specialist at Red Mill, was also recognized by Channel 13 as a top teacher. Additionally, the East Greenbush Teachers Association recently recognized Allie Harding, who is a speech therapist within our district, as the EGA Teacher of the Year. And earlier this year, our Board of Education recognized Liz Corey, who is a special education teacher at Janae Elementary School, as the Special Ed Teacher of the Year. We have outstanding teachers in all of our schools. We want to make sure that we provide them with professional development to continue to improve their teaching strategies that they use with your students. Additionally, we want to promote an environment of continuous learning, not only for our students, but for all of our faculty and staff, including our support staff and our educational leaders. We are very, very proud of the fact that recently, through a poll that has been conducted by the Times Union newspaper, that for the second year in a row, based on community support, we have been determined to be the best school district in the capital region. And that comes with a lot of responsibility. Comes with the recognition that our families support us, but also comes with the understanding that we never want to rest on our laurels. We want to make sure that we continue to have positive family support within each of our schools. We want to reach out and engage with our students and our families and our community. We want to continue the culture of academic excellence, and we want to look at gaps, things that we can do in the future to even get better. So thank you all for the support in determining us to be the best school district in the capital region. We will continue to strive to meet those expectations, but we also will look at areas where we know we need to improve. Additionally, it's important to our Board of Education to promote a well-rounded education. Our music programs, our arts programs, our extracurricular clubs are second to none. They complement the work that our students do in the classroom. It's often a music program or an athletic program or an after-school club where students learn those skills that I spoke about earlier in terms of communication, critical thinking, working together, and problem solving. As we all think back to our own schooling, we may not remember exactly what we learned in math class, but we may remember an experience we had in the high school musical, in an art class, or with a special coach. We want to point out the success of our golf jazz band, who recently performed at the Empire State Plaza. We also recognize the Columbia players and the Golf Middle School performances as some of the best school performances you will see north of Broadway. The Columbia High School players performed Freaky Friday this year, and it was an outstanding performance. So arts and education is critically important. Athletics, we want to be able to ensure that our students are competing on the athletic fields and on our courts and on our tracks, but we also want those students to demonstrate academic excellence and good character, and they do so. This year, our girls indoor track team won the Section 2 championship. In the fall of this year, 11 fall athletic teams received the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Scholar Athlete Award. And what that means is all of the students on those teams maintained a very high grade point average. Congratulations also to the Columbia boys and girls soccer teams that won the Section 2 Class A championships this fall. One of the things that I have the advantage of as the superintendent is looking at the district from all perspectives, from the time the children are coming into pre-K to the time that they come across the graduation stage. And the excellence that is reflected at the high school level is really a product of all the work that starts when those kids come in at the early elementary level, and in part because of the relationships that our students form with our faculty and staff, with our educational administrators, and with our families, wrapping around so many activities for them to feel supported and to be successful. Additionally, as a school district, we reach out to the community because the community supports us so much. Recently, we had a district-wide engagement in which we asked the community to join us in a one district, one community, one book initiative to celebrate inclusiveness and togetherness. And I thank everybody for their support for that event. It was terrific. And we had lots of evidence that our kids really enjoyed that. And I think maybe even our families and our staff enjoyed it even more. And here are some photos of our kids finding Vita at the Family Dollar or at Stewart's or at Hannaford's. And I appreciate all the family support for that initiative. It was something new we wanted to try on a larger scale. And we feel that it was very, very successful. And we capped it off with the author, Holly Goldberg Sloan, visiting our district, which was a wonderful experience. We also, thankfully, are beyond COVID-19 guidelines and rules that prevented us from engaging as much as we love to engage with our community. We brought back such events as Winterfest, which was very successful at Goff Middle School. I think we had one of the highest attendance rates that event has ever had. We thank the families for bringing their kids and supporting that event. It's a good opportunity to interact with our families and our children on an informal basis and to do something fun during what can be the dreary winter months of upstate New York. Additionally, our transportation department joined the celebration of the holidays this year and participated in the East Greenbush Holiday Parade, including Rudolph the Red-Nosed School Bus. We also are grateful for those in the community who have served our country. I'm very proud of the fact that each of the schools in East Greenbush does something to celebrate Veterans Day, wonderful ceremonies that are appreciated by our students. They're great learning opportunities for our kids to learn lessons around citizenship and civics. Additionally, our teachers through the East Greenbush Teachers Association and our students volunteer to help the community to rake leaves of the veterans in various neighborhoods. And we appreciate all of the efforts of our teachers and our students to serve the community. As we start to look at the numbers, I talked about the board's direction to be fiscally responsible. This graph represents the trends of our school district budget related to the New York State tax cap. Often the tax cap is referred to as a 2% tax cap, but it really isn't a 2% tax cap. It's a formula that varies by district. The blue graph represents the amount of tax levy increase New York State says that our board could have raised the tax levy over the course of the last 7 years. So, for example, this year, the tax cap set by New York State indicated that East Greenbush could raise the tax levy by 3.96% and only receive a majority vote of 50% of the community. The board has chosen to raise the tax levy only 0.5%, not quite anywhere near the amount that New York State would permit. As you look at this current year and prior years, going back through 2021, you see that the board has been very mindful of the need to keep the tax levy increases low, with a 0% tax levy increase in 21-22, a 0% tax increase in 22-23, and again, 0.5% tax levy increase while still adding programs and services to students. How are we able to do that? Our board has been mindful of the fact that over the course of the last few years, our district is receiving more state support in terms of foundation aid. There was a period of time several years ago in which our district was considered to be underfunded by the state because of the state's fiscal issues. The state legislature and the governor have corrected that situation and have provided more aid to our school district based on what New York State says is required by East Greenbush, provide a basic sound education. So our board, in the period of time in which we were receiving more money from the state, has kept the tax levy average over the last 3 years at only 0.167%, which is probably, if not one of the lowest in the region, the lowest in the region, as we've had programs and services. So we are mindful of the impact of the budget on our taxpayers. Even with a small tax increase that is proposed, we will yield an additional $291,000 for our program. Additionally, many taxpayers will see their tax bills not change next year. In fact, some will see the tax bills reduced because East Greenbush is experiencing growth in its property tax base. So we're taking a very small tax levy increase of 0.5% and applying it to a growing tax base, which would result in many tax bills remaining the same or going down. The district will yield through the tax levy increase $58.6 million. That's the total tax levy. Additionally, we receive what's called payment in lieu of taxes from various businesses who have been approved by the Rensselaer County Industrial Development Agency to have their full assessment of taxes reduced to spur economic development and job growth and retention. Those payments come to the district. We estimate there'll be about $5.9 million in what's called pilot payments received from properties who aren't at full taxation as approved by the industrial development agencies of Rensselaer County. Additionally, our total state aid, you can see the increase from this current year of $30.7 million to $35.3 million. We received a large increase because the state was making up for a long period of time in which we received reductions in our state aid or minimal growth in our state aid. So now we've been made whole. I expect that we will not receive large state aid increases in the future. It may range more in the range of 0 to 2%. So this is kind of a payback from the state to our district. Federal revenues receive about $350,000. Miscellaneous revenues such as fees that we collect for outside groups to use our facilities, as well as other types of interests and other payments that come to the district. We transfer some monies to be able to close the gap in the budget and to make sure that we keep our tax levy low, and our total revenue, including the appropriated fund balance, will be $108.8 million. Our proposed budget is $108.8 million with a 0.5% increase in the tax levy. So budget to budget, the current budget is $104.8 million. Proposed budget, which will be voted on May 16th, is $108.8 million. That represents about a 3.79% budget increase. The inflation rate right now is about 8%. So it is well less than the rate of inflation. What have we added to the budget? What are some of the adjustments? We are adding a halftime music position that we can have one dedicated instrumental strings teacher at the elementary school level. We have more students taking strings instruments now than we ever had. There's been a marked increase in the number of kids who are taking strings. And so by adding that part-time music position, we'll have the same strings teacher teaching at the elementary school level. Additionally, we are restoring some previous cuts that occurred when the financial situation of the state was very bad back in 2009 and 2010. Our enrollment has stayed steady at Goff Middle School. We are working on putting the structure in place for middle school teaming that was once in place. Teaming involves kids sharing the same teachers in common, so same group of kids is assigned to what is really a smaller learning community. In order to facilitate that, the restoration of a third assistant principal. We used to have 3, we went down to 2 because we are in a better position right now, and some of our program and student needs have grown at the middle school level. We are restoring a dedicated assistant principal for 6th grade, for 7th grade, 8th grade. We believe that will not only improve the ability to manage the school, but we believe it will improve the oversight and the communication with our students, with our families, and serve the community well. We're also adding some teaching positions at the 6th grade level and some part-time positions at the 7th and 8th grade level. We're going to move to full teaming at the 6th grade. And we're going to make sure that our class sizes are below the class size guidelines in 7th and 8th grade. We are adding a reading teacher. We had 2 reading teachers retire this year. We need to replace one at the high school. And we are increasing psychologist staff because we have more students who are receiving special education, including we are required by law to serve special education students who are receiving those services in the private schools. And there has also been an increase in the number of special education referrals coming from our private schools that serve our resident students. We have a teacher position who's currently on assignment to help support curriculum development and early intervention work with English language arts, including literacy, reading, but she was also working on behavior. So that position is Lisa Mahar, who will continue in that position. We have a growing need for support in our English as a new language program because we have more students coming into that program and we have more staff to meet the federal and state requirements for students who need English as a new language services. So we are putting in a stipend for a department chair. That is not a full-time position, but it's a stipend that an existing teacher receives to do the coordination work. In athletics, we are adding 4 assistant varsity coaches, 2 at the boys level and 2 at the girls level. Varsity assistant coaches become important, particularly on away trips. If there's an injury or something occurring, we want to tighten the supervision at our athletic events. One thing that's not on this list is the fact that we are adding some athletic offerings. We are going to add girls wrestling. It has become quite popular, and we have some girls who are participating in wrestling, and we have sufficient interest to do that. What is also not on this list is we are going to be partnering with Troy to have a girls and a boys swim offering, and the details of that are still being worked out. Additionally, there's some technology for the Human Resources Office. There is an expansion occurring of our Wi-Fi connections. Currently, our Wi-Fi connections are located in classrooms and offices, but not in hallways. We want to expand the connection, particularly in the event of an emergency, so that we don't lose coverage, cell phone coverage in the halls. We are eligible for a federal E-rate program, which reimburses our school district for various network-related expenses. In order to receive those monies, we need to spend the money to improve our network. And then the monies that we will receive will go back into purchasing the need to replace some of the Chromebooks and devices that our students use. So this particular recommendation not only comes at an expense to the budget, but it drives revenue on the other side of the budget that we can use to replenish some of our student devices. We're adding a physical education course called Fitness for Life. The cost of that course is very low in terms of buying some equipment. Many of the students are not interested in working out in the weight room, for example, or participating in some of the games and team sports. This is a Fit for Life course, which would involve students doing aerobic exercises, such as working on the bikes, rowing machines, treadmills, and learning life fitness and health and wellness skills. We need to replace an aging and deteriorating dump truck, which is used by our grounds department, particularly during the winter season for plowing. We've started a project this year of replacing some of the outdated, dingy, and broken blinds in our classrooms at the elementary school level. We're going to do a little bit of that at a time to replace those, which are probably at least 20 to 30 years old in some cases. We've made some upgrades to some furniture at the transportation department, and we are continuing our universal pre-K program. We will have the class at Red Mill, Janae, and DPS next year, as well as we have 7 slots for students at the Early Childhood Education Center, which is a community-based provider in North Greenbush. So 61 total students being served in UPK again next year through the UPK grant that we received, plus the board has agreed to allocate some general fund monies to cover the balance of the costs. Traditionally, we replace our buses through utilization of a reserve, which was approved by voters within the community. As the district saves money each year within the general fund budget, the board appropriates monies into a reserve that is specifically set up under state rules to be used only for the purpose of replacing aging, high mileage buses with newer, more efficient, modern buses. And we're happy to report that this year, there will be no borrowing of money, no interest and principal associated with replacing some of our buses because we have a sufficient reserve of $965,000 that we will use to purchase 4 66 passenger buses, 2 wheelchair buses, and 2 30 passenger buses. We sell our old buses. We get some revenue from those. We have a fleet replacement schedule, which is available on our website for people to look at. And currently we run about 102 buses within our fleet. Additionally, we're investigating what the district needs to do to transition to zero emission electric buses, which is a requirement of the state, and the transportation department is currently engaged with a consultant in a feasibility study. Good news about the bus purchases. For every dollar we spend on a bus, the state replenishes the district 69 cents on the dollar. So 69.5% of the money that we use to spend on a bus comes back to the district in the form of a transportation aid payment, and that aid goes right back into the reserve to buy future buses. So on May 16th, which is a week from this coming Tuesday, there will be 3 propositions for the community to consider and to vote on. Proposition 1 is the proposed operating budget for next year of $108.8 million. Proposition 2 is to allocate monies from the reserve to purchase the buses, 9 buses at a cost of $965,386. And we have 3 vacant seats on our Board of Education. And we have 4 candidates who are seeking election to our board. Candidates are Mike Buno, who is our current board president. He has been serving on the board, I believe, for 9 years, 6 of those years as our president. Incumbent Mark Mann is the second candidate. He is our current vice president. He has been a long time serving board member. Jesse Temple is a new candidate for the board. He is a parent and a community member, parent of children at Red Mill School. And Andy Garrigan is a parent within a community. He has 2 children who have graduated from the high school, and he has 1 at the high school. And he's also involved in the community through the Sren School Baseball Organization. So Mike Buno, incumbent board member, Mark Mann, incumbent board member, and 2 new candidates for the board, Jesse Temple and Andy Garrigan. Kathleen Curtin, who's been on our board for a long time, has chosen not to run again. So that concludes my presentation. I appreciate everybody's attention and time, and I will take any questions, ideas, or concerns that anyone may have. And if you want to think about things for a little while and you don't feel comfortable raising a question now, please feel free to email me at any time. I'm happy to respond. And thank you again. Any questions? Beth?
Hi.
Hi.
You probably remember me from last year. I was the one that spoke the most last year too. I'm the treasurer of the PTO board at DPS.
Thanks, Beth, for being here. I appreciate it. I do remember you. Yes, I do remember.
Yeah. Thank you for having us again. I really appreciate all of the time that you take to present the financials to the PTO. I'm the senior accountant at Healthcare Association of New York State as well, in my day job. So this is a lot of my belly work, if you will.
Excellent.
I did have a couple of questions that I was jotting down throughout your presentation, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I appreciate it.
No, not at all. So Haney's is a C4, so I'm very familiar with the lobbying and advocacy that we do for the hospitals of New York State. So I was just wondering, with the state fulfilling, and you said back paying us for what they were missing out on in previous years, I wanted to see, is that being fulfilled now, or are they still a little bit under? How are they doing with funding East Greenbush school districts currently? Are they completely fulfilling us now and back paying us, or are they still a little bit under and kind of making up for lost time in addition?
Well, I'm going to answer it generally, and I'm going to ask Ms. Wager to help me with this. So yes, they are fulfilling their obligation to follow the foundation aid formula, in the sense that districts that were categorized as underfunded, East Greenbush was characterized as underfunded. 2 years ago, we're told that the state was going to bring each of us over a 2-3 year period
Kind of like a phase
up
in.
to a full foundation. So what we received this year was really the last 50% payment on what was owed to us in accordance with the foundation aid formula. We received an increase last year that represented about 50%, and an increase this year that represented about 50%. And actually, we received more money this year than what we thought we were going to receive when we looked at this 2-year plan, because of the inflation rate, ironically. The inflation rate is calculated into the formula. So because the costs have gone up, we received more money. So in terms of, we've been made whole.
Right.
Okay. However, the formula is an old formula, and it is based on old data, old enrollment data to some degree, old demographic data to some degree, and old financial data to some degree. So there have been some organizations that have called to have the formula updated. We don't know whether we would benefit from that or not. Other districts that were underfunded, including some of our neighbors, or were overfunded over the years, received a minimum 3% increase this year. So nobody lost any money this year. Those districts that were underfunded got their last 50% payment. Those districts that had already been brought up to a level of funding received a minimum of 3%.
Okay.
Am I correct in that, Linda?
Yes, that was an excellent explanation.
So going forward, my concern is that we shouldn't have an expectation that we're going, for example, we got a 20% total increase in aid. We're not going to get a 20% aid increase every year. We're considered to be an average wealth district. Districts that have more students who are economically disadvantaged receive higher increases in foundation aid. This large increase was really due to the fact that we were owed this money.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Linda?
I think you gave an excellent explanation, Mr. Simons. And yes, while we are being made whole from the gap that we had for years, it is important to realize that we are receiving more money because of inflation. So it's reflective of increased costs.
Gotcha. And we're receiving exactly what we should be receiving now. They're not underfunding us
No,
anymore.
not at all.
That's correct.
We are.
Gotcha. That was my main question. So
Right.
that's awesome. Thank you. And my next question, if you don't mind, do we receive any federal money or is it just state?
We do receive what's called Title I money, and there's
Okay.
different title. There's Title I, there's Title IIA, there's Title IV. Because we are not considered an economically disadvantaged district, we don't receive that much funding relative to our budget. And I don't know if you know how much Title money
It's a
we're
little over
receiving.
$1 million that we
Okay.
receive
Yeah, I
in
know
federal funding.
DPS is considered a Title I school, the one that I'm the treasurer for,
Right.
the PTO there. But I didn't know if any of the other districts or if the district as a whole received any other
Yeah.
federal money related to that, or if it was just school-based.
We do get Medicaid reimbursement
Oh, okay.
for certain special education services that are eligible for Medicaid, such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. There's a process by which we claim that aid, and then it comes back to the district in terms of Medicaid.
Gotcha. And then my last question is we have a zero-based budget, is that correct? Or do we have any retained earnings from last year? Or are we going to be having retained earnings from this year coming forward, or is it a zero-based?
Right. Technically, we don't have a zero-based budget. We do retain reserves and a level of undesignated fund balance.
Mhm.
And I want you to, if you can talk a little bit about the guidance on that and how that works in terms of,
Sure.
our
Sure.
auditing process.
Sure. According to New York State law, we are able to retain as an undesignated fund balance up to 4% of the subsequent year's budget. So, so we're able to retain 4% of that $1.8 million budget for next year. In addition to that, we have some restricted fund balance, which are our reserves. So we have reserves for workers' compensation, as well as our employee retirement systems, both ERS and TRS, and our employee benefits.
And any of the reserves, are they in any investments that are disclosable or not really?
No, school districts are very limited on investments. So, we don't have a lot of investments now.
Okay, gotcha.
Beth, I want to go back to your question on federal grants because I forgot one piece to it. We did
Sure.
receive fairly significant federal grant monies related to COVID-19 over the last last 3 years. So there was something called the CARISA funds and the American Recovery Plan funds. And next year is the last year which we will have any of those funds. So the CARISA funds are basically going to be spent by the end of this year, and the American Recovery Plan funds are allocated to such things as the summer school program that we've offered, some of the supports that we've offered in mental health and wellness. And one of the challenges of the district is that we want to retain some of those programs and services. For example, we've had early intervention specialists working with our kids to have them catch up in reading and math because of the impact of COVID-19. The kids are making really good gains as measured by our assessments, counseling support. So one of the reasons of having a slight tax increase this year, very small, is we're going to be losing those monies next year. And the small tax levy increase is a recurring revenue for the district. But I didn't want to, we use that money to really put programs and supports in place to help the kids recover academically and social emotionally from the situation with COVID-19 that forced us to have, impacted the instructional model that we had in terms of hybrid.
So you're trying to just retain those programs that were gained from
or reduce them through attrition. We've been able to reduce some of the positions through attrition as people have retired.
Makes sense. And then my other question was, is the bus reserve depleted? But you answered that in that when you purchase the buses, you will be able to get reimbursed based on the buses that you purchase. So that answers that.
We typically recommend to the board that they allocate some of the fund balance at the end of the year to put more money into the transportation reserve. And we also last year, actually it was earlier this year, the spring of last year, established a capital reserve that can be used for a future construction project to save the local taxpayer's share of monies associated with the borrowing. So we generally make a recommendation at the end of the year for the board to fund some of those reserves.
Sure. Yeah, and those were my main questions. The last question was just out of curiosity. Do we have lobbyists on staff, or do we do like third-party lobbyists? Do we lobby, I guess, is my main question.
You're looking at the lobbyist. Mr. Garrett is one too. We have an advocacy committee, and actually Mrs. Turner, who's on this meeting, Kim Turner, who's the PTO, I think vice president at Goff, or president, I'm not sure. Very involved in the school district nonetheless. We have an advocacy committee. And we have students on it too from the high school. We have parents on it. We have administrators on it. We have the teachers union on it. And we meet 3 to 4 times a year. We review various proposals that are out there from state organizations such as the New York State School Boards Association, Council of School Superintendents, NYSET. And this year we did something different. We visited the legislature with our high school students and met with our representatives and advocated for various positions, including the maintenance of the foundation aid increases, increasing the funding for pre-K, allowing districts to set aside a little bit more money. So we don't hire professional lobbying organizations. Sometimes BOCES does, but we don't do that. But we also work through BOCES. I'm the chair of the advocacy committee at the Questar BOCES too, which is represented by superintendents in the region. But we do lobby pretty actively, and we have a great response usually from folks like Assemblyman McDonald, Jake Ashby.
It seems that way because we were able to recoup the budget.
Yeah,
right?
they're very
And the funding
attentive
from
to
the
that.
state. That's what made me ask.
They're very attentive to East Greenbush.
Yeah, well done.
Thank
As
you.
it works, it seems
Thank
like
you.
it. So,
Thank you, Beth.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah. That was it. That was all I had.
Kim, did you want to say anything about the advocacy committee? Not to put you on the spot, but you've been a big part of that.
No, it's just great. The only question that I was going to have is you mentioned the feasibility study for the buses.
Yes.
What do we know when that was going to be done?
I think it's almost done in a draft form, and they're sharing that with Dr. McQueen, who's our new administrator for transportation services. And this really involves looking at what the energy requirements would be of the transportation center to plug in and recharge the buses, the charging stations, the power that would be necessary. How do you convert the fleet over time? Some of the state timelines are somewhat unrealistic. I believe it is, they would like by 2027 to put in place that districts can no longer purchase any buses other than zero emission buses. And by 2035, they want your entire fleet to be zero emissions. Is that right, Linda? So it's expensive. And Kim knows this because she's on the committee. Linda, just a regular diesel or gas bus compared to electric bus. You just want to kind of
Sure. Sure. So right now we pay approximately $120,000 for a 66 passenger bus. That same size bus as an electric vehicle will cost over $400,000. So the cost difference is enormous, and the time frame in which to do all of this is very short. So I'm sure that this will be discussed quite a bit in the future, and some of that's going to have to change. And we'll be looking for additional funding sources to help us with this transition.
So are there any other questions from any parents?
I have one more as a parent. So
Okay.
taking off my finance hat.
Okay.
I know that you guys have some shortages happening right now as far as employment. And I was wondering if there was anything to kind of going back to advocacy or advertising for bus drivers in particular, or any other shortages that you guys seem to be experiencing right now. Is there any plan to try and fix those vacancies?
We're trying everything we can.
I figured. I know. I'm sorry.
Part of it is
I'm
we negotiated a referrals bonus in the transportation department. So if a current driver or an employee refers somebody and they wind up getting qualified and licensed, there's an incentive for that referral.
Gotcha.
We advertise through all various methods. We have gone from being 13 drivers short to I think 4 now.
Okay.
Last year we were about 13 short, and we have been able to find people who are interested in driving. The licensing and training process is pretty cumbersome, but it should be because we want the kids being driven safely. But we've made some headway with drivers. We have a number of teaching positions open this year, and there has been a shortage of teacher candidates, and we have an impressive amount of applicants. I was told by Ms. Cannon today that some of her elementary vacancies, I think we have 3 or 4 elementary, we have 115 applications, which is nowhere near what it was last year. It was really very low. So I think things are looking up. But you know, this is a statewide issue that we've been talking about, is what can we do to encourage people to go into education. Clerical, also, we've struggled in some ways hiring clerical folks. Nurses, we have hired and replaced some retiring nurses, but nurses are hard to find. It's a very competitive job market right now. We've, in general, without getting into specifics, through our contract negotiations and some of our other planning, we tried to address that to make us as competitive as we can be within the resources that we have.
That's great.
Good
Thank
question.
you for saying
You're
that.
welcome. Welcome. Anybody else? So just in summary, I think it's a positive budget, and the fact that we are, you know, preserving our programs, adding supports and some offerings, enhancing our technology program. It is, we feel it's fiscally responsible. We've had a 1.37% tax levy increase over the last 3 years. 1.67 was it, Linda?
0.167 average.
Okay, 0.167. Okay, it was lower than what I claimed.
Yeah.
Okay, and we hope that the community will come out on May 16th and vote for the budget. We've had voter turnout diminish in school budget votes and boards elections over the course of the last several years. We certainly had a high turnout when we had mail-in ballots during the COVID shutdown year, but we would like to see people coming in and voting and participating in the process this year. So tell your families, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, come out and support the district and vote on May 16th.
Do we vote in our normal voting district?
Yes, DPS will be is for residents of Nassau. Green Meadow is for residents of Schodack who do not have a Nassau residence. I think I got that right.
You did mailing address.
That mailing address. Goff is for East Green. Goff is East Greenbush,
The vote.
and Belltop is all the same 4 schools that people have voted on is the same. I believe that some of the locations within the buildings have changed slightly to be more cognizant of visitors coming into the hallways, safety concerns. So the voting locations are adjacent to an exterior door. I think Jack is on here. Jack, if you're still on here.
I think he
He left. Okay, I know it's been changed at DPS slightly. It's not been changed at Green Meadow because it was in a good location. Goff is going to use the cafeteria, and the kids are going to have lunch in the gym that day, so people can go in the cafeteria door on the outside and come in. And Belltops is located right near an outside door. So there'll be signage, there'll be staff there to guide everybody and make sure that people know where to go.
Perfect.
Mr. Simons, could I just add and invite everyone we are going to have a Meet the Candidates night next Wednesday, May 10th at 7 o'clock in the Goff cafeteria. That will be a chance for people to ask questions and listen to our candidates, give their ideas and answer some of our questions.
Very good. So we'd love to see a lot of people come out for Meet the Candidates night too. We love the fact that we're having all these in-person activities again, and appreciate everybody again adjusting their plans, being here this evening, and thank you for your continued support of our students and our schools. We really appreciate it, and have a good evening.